Hey guys, Quiff the Lazy Geek here and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be looking at a new filter that I got from Altair Astro in the UK. This is a premium dual narrowband filter and I'll be using it in tandem with this filter which I already reviewed on the channel, which is the Altair Astro from the UK dual narrowband filter. Wait, what? Aren't they the same thing? Well, no, the box is a different color, so they're different. So what's all about those two filters? So those two filters, they're dual band narrowband filters. They're very narrow band, meaning their full width half max on each of their band passes is just 4 nanometers, which I consider to be kind of like the Goldilocks type of zone. And it will work extremely well from very light polluted cities like here in Tokyo. This one, which I already reviewed on the channel, passes H-alpha and oxygen 3. And so it is great for a color camera like the one that I have here. This is the Toptech camera with the IMX585 sensor in there. And with a single shot, I can capture both H-alpha and oxygen 3, which are very important emission wavelengths from emission nebulae that are in the sky, like the Orion Nebula, the Eagle Nebula with the famous pillars of creation, the Bubble Nebula, and tons of nebulas are out there, especially in summer with the Milky Way season. It's a lot of fun. And with just this filter, you can get amazing images. I'll put the link to my previous video on this above if you're interested. But then you can add this filter. So this filter is also a dual band narrowband filter. It's also 4 nanometer band passes, but this time it is oxygen 3, just like before, and sulfur 2. And sulfur 2 is kind of like the missing link if you want to do Hubble Palette, real, true Hubble Palette images. Basically use the same color palette as the Hubble Space Telescope does for imaging emission nebulae, like the famous Pillars of Creation image by the Hubble is done with the Hubble Palette, effectively, like H-alpha, sulfur 2, and oxygen 3. So once you have those two filters, you can use them together by using one night this particular filter with oxygen 3 and hydrogen alpha, and then the second night use the sulfur 2 and oxygen 3 filter. And this is exactly what I've done in the past few nights by pointing this telescope here, a 517 f3.6 roughly Newtonian telescope, towards the Pelican Nebula. And one night was spent with this, one night was spent with that, and later in this video we're going to look at the processing so that we can achieve a true Hubble Palette with a one-shot color camera that I have here using those two filters. First, a bit more details on those. So those filters, they're very narrowband. They're 4 nanometer band passes. So actually, when you look at the website for this one, or even that one now, the Altair Astro estimates that you want your focal ratio to be f4.8 or slower. Obviously, mine is f3.6, so it is higher. So we're using this in a marginal kind of situation. What is really cool, though, is each of those filters come with an individualized report like this one here, which tells us exactly what the filter band passes are, how they are placed and measured by spectrometer. And so this is the one for my S2 oxygen 3 dual band filter, and it is for this particular filter. You get your actual band pass spectrometer graph. And this is actually super important because if you've watched my videos in the past, you've seen that a lot of filters, they cut corners and they do not behave according to their specs, except that they kind of work still. They're not up to spec, they transmit less of the target bandpass than advertised, etc. But because they pass some of the signal that they're supposed to pass, it looks like to amateur photographers they're working fine when they're not. And so there's a lot of filters that are actually duds, but they still look like they're kind of working and that are out there. When you have a personalized filter report, this is not going to happen. And it also guarantees, because you get your personalized filter report, it guarantees that the filter will be up to spec. Now, this particular report is with a resolution of 1 nanometer, but I've talked to Altair Astro and they told me that in the next batch of filters, they're going to start providing the reports with 0.1 nanometer precision around the bandpass that are useful, like oxygen 3 and sulfur 2, or oxygen 3 and H-alpha. That said, the biggest weakness of those two filters is the price. It's 399 pounds, UK pounds per filter. That is not cheap, and this is what you pay for guaranteed quality of the filters. You know exactly what you're getting. You are not playing the lottery. And Altair Astro guarantees that if you have a telescope that is focal ratio 4.8 or slower, those filters will work perfectly for you. This time I've just gone a bit beyond what Altair Astro specified and used it with a faster system. The problem with faster systems is that the maximum angle of the light rays that hit the filter is higher. That causes a phenomenon called bandpass shift, and your target bandpass shifts, and the main wavelengths that you want to capture might suddenly get weaker. And I've double checked both of those filters with my own spectrophotometer. The specs match exactly what is in each of the filters reports, which is good. And what is very interesting is that this particular filter, the H-alpha oxygen 3, the oxygen 3 bandpass and the H-alpha bandpass are placed in a way that they will actually work really well, both of them, on a fast telescope like the 3.6 that I have here. Whereas this filter, the sulfur 2 is placed excellently. The oxygen 3 is placed so that, yeah, at f4.8 it's going to have like 90-something% transmittance, which is excellent. But at f4.6, once we get the incident light angles, we'll get a lower figure, maybe around 70%. The only time when you have some lottery with those filters is when you try to use them out of spec with a super fast focal ratio that I have here. Talking with Altair Astro, it seems that they're thinking about like making an f2 or maybe f3.5 or a pre-shifted version of their filters for you guys with RASA telescopes with super fast newts like I have here, or with Hyperstar like I have on my C6 Hyperstar there, which will be amazing because one of the things that I've also noticed is that those filters do not exhibit any halos. Unfortunately, I didn't save the images, but when I did point at Vega, which is like basically the worst test that you can do on them, there was a slight halo. And that's it. You'll see my results of the Pelican Nebula. There's a fairly bright star in there. There's like no halo whatsoever. So if we can achieve that at f2 as well, it would be absolutely amazing. And another good thing about using those two filters together is that you are capturing by force a lot of oxygen 3. You are mathematically capturing oxygen 3 whenever you use those filters. So you're capturing twice the oxygen 3 compared to H-alpha, which is a very strong signal in the red spectrum, so less affected by LED light pollution. And S2, which is less strong than H-alpha, but also in the deep red spectrum, very little affected by light pollution. So you're forced to get more signal to noise ratio on oxygen 3, which is the one most affected by moonlight and LED light pollution. So it's actually great because if you're doing monochrome and you're like me, taking oxygen 3 exposures gets tiring after a while because you see less results than with H-alpha. And I always end up taking the same amount as H-alpha or sulfur 2. With this, you're forced to take twice as much. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go inside and show you how I will do the processing of those two filters on the Pelican Nebula with this telescope and this one-shot color camera in PixInsight, and how I will achieve a proper, true Hubble palette using oxygen 3 and H-alpha and S2 on my computer. Before we do that, I want to let you know that if you subscribe to my channel, it is mathematically and scientifically proven that your astrophotography will get 10% better. Guaranteed. Not guaranteed. But yeah, subscribe, like the video, click the bell icon. It can never hurt and it's free. If you really want to support the channel, you can also join my Patreon. It really helps the channel out. Or you can join the channel as a member. This support truly makes all the difference, so thank you so much. Also, I want to mention that I received both filters for free from Altair Astro directly. The first filter, I actually bought it. They had no idea I was a YouTuber, but there was a miscommunication between us about the capabilities of the filter, and rather than have it shipped back and then replace it, they actually gave it to me for free. But it was unintentional. This filter, they saw my video about the original filter online and they're like, oh wow, this guy was a YouTuber, let's send him this to test out. So keep that in mind. I am biased. I cannot be objective because I got those filters for free, but just for your information. With that, let's get inside. Okay, we are in PixInsight and I have opened two images. We have the Altair H-alpha Oxygen 3 filter on the left and the Altair Sulfur 2 Oxygen 3 on the right. And so we have all of the colors that we need to do the Hubble palette. So first let me do an unlinked stretch on both of them. Here is the H-alpha O3 and here is the S2O3. And doesn't the S2O3 colors look awesome? I almost want to just like use this for my image. It looks this color palette with like kind of like the deepish blue and the red of the S2 looks so good, and this is because the S2 signal is much weaker than the H-alpha signal, and so the Oxygen 3 isn't completely overwhelmed by H-alpha, which is the reason why we have like those more muted colors in the image on the left. Now, how do we combine those images to do a proper Hubble palette? So I'm just gonna do the basic stuff first, like noise exterminator, blur exterminator, background neutralization, all that stuff, and I'll see you once it's done. Okay, we now have the basic stuff done, and what I want to do is basically play with those images without any stars in them, and then at the very end of the process I'll put back the stars. So that means that I need to get my stretched stars, because I'll be stretching the image in the meantime, and so I want like my final stars to put back in the image, and so I'll just take like the H-alpha stars, which means that I will use one of Bill Blanchen's scripts to do a linked stretch here. Then I am going to extract the stars using Star Exterminator. Okay, here we have the star. They have a greenish hue, so while I'm going to remove the green from them. Don't really care that much about the stars. We can play with that later. I'm just going to rename this stars and put that in an icon, not worry about it. Remove both steps of the pre-process because now I want to be back to linear. And now that both my images are in linear mode, I can remove the stars from the linear image. I can even uncheck the generate star image because I will not be using the stars until the very end. Okay, now I have my starless images for both the H-alpha O3 on the left and the sulfur 2 O3 on the right. We've captured O3 a lot, which is awesome. And my next step will be to split the channels so I can create my oxygen 3, sulfur 2, and H-alpha images directly. So for that, for each of the images, I am going to use this button to split to red, green, and blue. And this is H-alpha O3, so the red, I'm just going to rename it to HA, right? Because this is our H-alpha. And let me stretch this. Okay, this looks beautiful because H-alpha is a very strong signal. If we look at the oxygen 3, we can see that green and blue, the green is much less noisy than the blue, right? So I want to give a lot of importance to the green part rather than the blue part. This makes sense. We have twice as many green pixels capturing this oxygen 3 signal, and we also have more light pollution in the blue side of the spectrum. So taking that into account, I will just rename temporarily this to G and B. And we want the oxygen 3 from the first image. I'm just going to do like 0.1 times B. So we want to include a little bit of the blue because I'm feeling generous. But honestly, I could even just keep the green or do something like a maximum operation between blue and green. It's like really up to how you want to do it. And here we are. We're going to have 90% of the green channel, 0.1% of the blue channel will be our oxygen 3 from the first image. And there we have it. This is image 11, and this is what I'm going to call oxygen 3 1. And now we can do the same thing for the sulfur 2 and oxygen 3 image. So I'm going to split all of the channels. And again, the red is sulfur 2, right? So there's no doubt here. I'm just going to rename the red channel sulfur 2. Let's have a quick look at it. It is noisy because it is a much weaker signal, even though it has more integration time. But that's how things are. Now looking at the green and blue channel, I suspect that we will see something very similar. Green and blue. Here we are. So we're going to do something very similar as before. I'm just going to rename the green one to G, the blue one to B, and we want most of the data to come from the green channel. So I'm just going to do the exact same pixel math operation. And now we're left with the image O3 2, which comes from my sulfur 2 oxygen 3 filter. So now I can combine the oxygen 3 from the first filter and the second filter. And for whatever reason, likely seeing, you can see there is much more detail in the oxygen 3 from the first night compared to the second night. So seeing, wind, all of these factors that can affect like the amount of detail that we have. So I really want to like put the main weight on the oxygen 3 1. I could even like throw away oxygen 3 2 to some extent, but I still want my boost in signal to noise ratio. So I'm going to say I want like 20% of O3 2, which is a bit noisier and has less detail. Like the less details is kind of like a dead giveaway that my seeing was worse on that particular night. And then, or that we had a lot of wind, or both. And then the oxygen 3 1 from the H alpha O3 image will have much more weight. And now we get our final oxygen 3 image. This is what I am going to use in the end. I'm going to call it O3. And we're left with basically 3 image, H alpha, sulfur 2, and oxygen 3. Now, how do we combine those images? Well, there's multiple ways. We could, while they are in the linear state as they are right now, just combine them via some pixel math. What I'm going to try is to just stretch them using Bill's stretch scripts. And I'm just going to put like, okay, a stretch that's basically equivalent to all 3 images. And let's remove the screen transfer function from all of them to see what the stretch gave us. And then we're going to use LRGB combination, which in theory should be used only on stretched images. And I'm going to say that maybe I can use H alpha as the luminance. Yeah, I'm going to use H alpha as luminance. And then we have red will be sulfur 2 for the Hubble SHO palette. Green will be the H alpha, and blue will be the oxygen 3. I'm going to go check chrominance noise reduction and just apply this globally, which should create a new color image. And here we are. Look at this. Already, those colors look absolutely gorgeous. I almost don't need to do anything based on those colors. They're just beautiful. Now, if you don't get the colors that you want at this stage, which is very common, you can go and use one of Bill Blenchen's, again, Cosmic Photons processes. And if you're wondering where to get all of those processes and scripts, I'll put links down in the description. And the way you want to get those scripts and processes is to go to Resources, Updates, and click on Manage Repositories. And then you can add the repositories one URL by URL by just clicking the Add button. And once you're done, you can go to Resources, Updates, check for updates. It will download the relevant scripts and processes, and then you'll have to restart PixInsight to install them. Once they're there, you can actually use the process narrowband normalization, which I have here, and you would select SHO, sulfur, so the Hubble palette effectively, and apply it to the image. And you can see even with my image as it is right now, I changed the colors a little bit. Is it better or not? I don't know, but I kind of like the colors that I have originally, so I'm not going to apply it right now. I'm first going to do some curves transformations. And I'm just going to like pump up kind of the luminosity and the contrast a little bit. Add also a bit of saturation. And for now, just apply those curves. And look at those colors. Aren't they gorgeous? One little thing that I'd like to try is select the yellow color that we have at the edge between the transition between H-alpha, sulfur 2 and oxygen 3, and kind of pump up the gamma, or the brightness of that color. So for that, I can use one of Bill and Cosmo Photon's color mask modes, which is another one you can install. We can select yellow as the target color, and I want to make sure that the mask is blurred. I'm going to set like 6 layers to remove. Click OK. And we get this star mask, this mask, sorry. And then I'm going to apply it to the image. And let's try to add a bit. Oh, this is kind of nice. Just a little bit of luminosity, of brightness to that transition area, which is pretty cool. It kind of like helps get that transition out, popping out a bit more. Then I can remove that mask. And I can do something very similar with the red area. So here using the exact same method, I created a red mask. I applied it, and if I apply those curves there, we can touch up the red a little bit. I actually want to maybe make like the red curve slightly higher. Let's look at the preview like this and apply. Bam! We have the H-alpha shadows here. And then we can deal with the cyan color that we have here, or cyan. I don't remember. Under color mask, we're gonna go for cyan. And again, create the mask, apply it. And then we can see what happens when we play with curves. So we want to be like very subtle, but at the same time I like to just like pump the saturation on the blue, so we have this nice contrast between the H-alpha and oxygen 3 areas in that image. And let's apply what I have here. And this is so cool, maybe a bit too violent. But I like what I see, so I'm just going to remove the mask. We're going to do curves transformation, but you can see this is a lot of freedom to do whatever the heck you want. How does this look? Let's do a little layer of noise exterminator again. I know we're not supposed to do it at this stage, but I find it works still quite well. I think I went overboard on the red for the H-alpha, but yeah, whatever. And then I can simply apply back the stars. And for that, I can use my usual pixel mask formula. And we want to make sure that we create a new image with the stars. And with this particular processing, this is currently my final image. And this is how you can make a proper SHO Hubble palette with just a color camera without having to do monochrome mode or binning or anything like that. You use it as a color camera, you collect twice as much oxygen 3 as the other 2 channels, you combine them, you have fun, and you get results like this from Tokyo. Isn't that amazing? So obviously the filters are really expensive, but you're paying for quality, you're paying for the filter per filter measurements, and you're paying for to avoid the lottery. I hope that Altair Astro can expand their filter offering to cover faster telescopes like my own Newtonian. Again, we're kind of like, this is pushing those filters to the limit and beyond their specified limit. And so this is how you can accomplish a true Hubble palette with only a color camera and 2 expensive filters, but really high quality as well. So I'll put all of the links, of course, in the description to those Altair Astro filters, to the camera, that IMX5X5 camera that I am using. Also, by the way, if you're interested in those Taupe Tech cameras that I am using, but you're located in the United States and you want support on those, that is based locally. There's an American-based firm called Ogma that has those cameras as well. So I'll put the link down below to the Ogma version of the camera. I think it's actually the same price as on AliExpress. So if you're in the US, it just makes sense to go with the Ogma way. As I'm recording this, it's not 100% sure, but I might have access to a coupon that I can give to you guys so that when you order one of those Ogma cameras, you get a small discount. Not big, but still any discount is worth having. If that's really the case, I'll put the information down in the description. With that, I will leave you with the zoomed in version of the image to feast your eyes upon. I mean, it's just 2 nights from Tokyo, so it's not like the best Pelican Nebula ever. By the way, why is it called the Pelican Nebula? I have no idea. For me, in my heart, it has and will always be the Blob Nebula, but whatever. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you're new and you like this video. You can also click that bell icon and leave a like, leave a comment as well. It truly helps the channel out. As always, thank you so much also to my Patreon supporters and channel members. You make a huge difference and keep this channel going. But more important than all of that, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget whenever you can to look up at the stars, and I'll see you next time.